If
un
everybody
pequeño,
this channel, but there's no need to mute the original audio because I think that's why sometimes we can't hear people. So if we just everybody go to the English channel, but no need to mute original audio unless you're on the Spanish channel. Yeah, is there anything you'd like to share today, Guru
¿hay algo que
Maharaj?
le
Before
gustaría
you take the
compartir hoy?
questions?
Well, I'm in the San Francisco Bay
Bueno,
Area,
estoy
and I've been
en el
doing
área
programs here. I
de
did
San Francisco haciendo
programs
programas,
the last 2 days, and then I got
así
a
que tengo 2
program
días.
this evening also.
Tengo un programa esta
And
noche.
a lot of older devotees,
Muchos devotos,
some of Prabhupada's disciples,
algunos
disciples of
discípulos de
Pujapad
Prabhupada
Sridhar Maharaj,
y de Pujapad
disciples
Sridhar
of Narayan
Maharaj,
Maharaj, Puri
Naraya Maharaj,
Maharaj,
Puri
so forth,
Maharaj,
attending.
están
And the reception
participando
has been overwhelmingly warm
y ha sido
and
muy, muy
enthusiastic.
cálido y entusiasta de parte de
So
ellos.
I did the program, as I say, for
Así
on
que
Friday, which was Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj's appearance day,
estuve
and then from
también el
there I
día de
got
ayer, que fue
spontaneous invitations for other
el día de la aparición
programs over the
de
weekend.
Sridhar
So I'm keeping
Maharaj, así
busy
que
here.
recibí
It's been
muchas
very nice,
invitaciones, he estado muy ocupado,
and
ha sido muy agradable.
that's what I've been up to. In the end of
Así
this
que en
week,
eso he estado yo.
Friday, will be
Este
going to North
viernes
Carolina.
iré
Where I
a
have a number
Carolina
of
del Norte,
programs lined up as well.
ya
So
que ahí tenemos varios
I'm doing my
festivales
part.
programados. Así que eso es todo
And
de
here
mi
we are this
parte.
morning. So what are the questions?
Estamos aquí esta mañana. ¿Cuáles son las preguntas?
Wonderful. So the first question
La primera
today is
pregunta
from
hoy
Sadhvi.
es de
If you'd like
Sadhvi.
to unmute yourself, Sadhvi.
Yes, Dandavats Guru Maharaj.
Dandavats Guru Maharaj,
I have a
tengo una
question
pregunta
about
acerca de
seeing like the gap between.
la brecha entre...
I mean, I cannot judge it exactly,
No,
but I
no
see a
puedo
very big
decirlo con
gap
exactitud, pero
where you are,
veo
where I am.
una gran
And you usually
diferencia entre
mention
dónde
like it
estaba
would take
y
1 to
quién soy
3
ahora.
lifetimes or something, not to get to the, I mean, in some lectures. And it feels like
Siente
it would need, for me, it needs, it
como
feels
si
it would need
necesitara
more time than
más
like 1
tiempo.
to 3 lifetimes sounds like
2 o
very
3 vidas suena como
short, like
algo muy
very,
corto,
very few.
muy poco.
And like, how comes like
Entonces, ¿cómo
that
puede,
in this lifetime one
se puede en esta
cannot
vida
make to shorten the gap, the distance,
acortar esta
I mean,
distancia
between
So
disciple and guru?
entre
Like,
el guru
well,
y el
you are shortening
discípulo?
the gap.
Bueno, ya estás estrechando esta
And all the
brecha.
results
Esos son
of
los
your practice and
resultados.
so forth
Eres el
don't accrue
resultado de tus
immediately.
prácticas.
So I say it takes many lifetimes. It's true, but how many lifetimes have you spent, and perhaps in different forms of life also,
Y bueno, y
where you
quizás cuántas
originally
vidas ya has
got
pasado en
influenced by
eso.
Krishna consciousness
Ha sido
as a
influenciada
flower picked for Krishna
por
and so
conciencia
forth.
de
So
Krishna.
it could take a while.
Puede tomar un
But now you have
tiempo,
human life,
pero ahora
which
tienes
is
vida
rare.
humana, lo que es
And human
raro,
life, you have a guru and so
y en
forth,
esta vida tienes un guru.
and you're engaged in serious spiritual practice and so forth. But again, all the results don't necessarily accrue
Todos esos
in
resultados no
immediate.
necesariamente
So
son
you meet
inmediatos,
devotees in this
no son
life who you
resultados
think are
inmediatos.
more advanced than you, right?
Puedes pensar que en
And
esta vida
the
hay
gap that
devotos
you're
que son
speaking
más
about
avanzados que tú.
seems much narrower for them than it seems to you. So in your next life, people will be
Entonces, en
looking
tu
at you like that.
siguiente vida,
If you don't go
hay
the
gente que te va a
distance,
ver
for
a ti de esa
example, in this life
forma,
and enter the
viendo que
Prakat Lila,
tienes menor
which
distancia
goodness, I mean,
que
your
otras
next life
personas.
will be extraordinary. You look like a real sadhu
Y bueno, y así progresando hasta
in
que
everyone's eyes,
seas
hit the
realmente
ground,
un sadhu real
running, so to
eh, en-
speak. Hmm?
y que todos los demás
So
se asombren por
then
eso.
a life like that,
En una vida
then
como
another
esa
life.
puede tomar unas
So
vidas
there's 3,
más.
right? This one, 2 more. Take birth in Krishna Lila. So
Y luego, siendo un sadhu,
I mean, that said,
tomas
I mean,
nacimiento en el Krishna Lila y bueno, ahí
it's,
hay otras vidas más.
it's a way of thinking about it. I think is reasonable, but
Entonces creo que es razonable pensarlo así.
your question is how to close the gap. I mean,
Pero
that's what we
tu
do.
pregunta
That's
es
what our
cómo reducir esa
practice
brecha y
is
eso es lo que
about.
estamos
And the fact
haciendo.
that
De eso se trata la
it
práctica.
seems to be wide, the distance.
Pareciera ser
Well,
una gran
Pujapad Sridhar
distancia.
Maharaj
Pujapad
used
Sridhar
to
Maharaj
comment along these
solía
lines like
comentar
this. He would
estas
say
líneas
that
diciendo
when we feel that we don't have,
Cuando
the more
sentimos
we
que
feel we don't
no,
have, the
que no
more that we
tenemos,
have.
entonces
Mm.
más tenemos.
When we feel that the more distant we feel, the
Mientras más
more
distancia
closer we actually
sentimos,
are,
entonces realmente
because
estamos
we
más
are very
cerca,
distant
porque sí
from that
estamos
high
muy
ideal.
distantes de
Mm.
ese
So
elevado ideal.
the more that we come to reckon with that, deal with that,
Entonces,
and
mientras
not let
más
it bother
lidiemos con
us,
eso
just by
y
the fact,
no nos
because
moleste,
along with recognizing how
porque junto
distant
con
we actually
reconocer
are
qué
from that
tan distantes
ideal of
estamos
Braj Prem,
de ese
Mm.
ideal de Braja Prem,
actually understanding,
entendiéndolo
along with that
correctamente, junto con
comes the
eso,
understanding of how
viene el
fortunate
entendimiento de cuán
we
afortunados
are to be
somos
involved at all.
de estar
with it.
involucrados de la forma que sea.
Before I continue to tell the story of
Y voy a contar la historia
Sridhar
de
Maharaj, well, I'll continue with one of my god brothers
bueno, uno de mis
said to him,
hermanos
Guru Maharaj, what if
espirituales,
we
junto
really
con Guru
feel,
Maharaj,
that we're fallen? He said, really? And
y le decía, ¿y qué
he
pasa
thought
si
that was a
realmente
good,
sentimos
good
que
sign.
somos caídos?
But
Y
the
le
story
decía,
of
eso es muy
Mukunda,
bueno.
associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, comes to mind that most of you are familiar with, but I'll relate it quickly. He had said something or done something that Mahaprabhu took exception to and refused to give him darshan. And
Hubo un
he then,
pasatiempo de
after
Chaitanya
some time, he
Mahaprabhu.
asked the devotees to ask Mahaprabhu when he would again grant him darshan. And Mahaprabhu, just hearing his name, said, not for 1,000 lifetimes. So they had to go back and tell Mukunda, and they were, felt it was a difficult task to relate that to him. But when they related it to him, he began to dance in joy. And so they said to him, why are you ecstatic about that? 1,000 lifetimes. He said, because I will get it.
Le preguntaban
1,000 lifetimes, that's nothing.
en cuánto tiempo se
The
podría
fact
tener
that I will
darshan de
get it
Chaitanya
again,
Mahaprabhu.
that's all that
Y le
matters to me. And
dijeron
of course, they
10.000
returned
vidas y esta
to
persona
Mahaprabhu, who
empezó
said, what did he
a bailar
say?
en éxtasis y le preguntaron por
And he said he
qué
began
estás
to
bailando en
dance and
éxtasis,
said, I
qué
will
te hizo
get.
danzar. Es
And
como,
Mahaprabhu
y
said,
decía
bring
que
more
el hecho de saber que voy a llegar allí
So these
le produjo ese
stories
éxtasis.
and
De
the
ese tipo de
story and
historias
what I related about Sridhar Maharaj tell us
eran
about a
reveladas por
disposition,
Sridhar Maharaj y nos mostraba su disposición.
where this doesn't become an issue for us because we actually understand what we're involved in. If you're going to go to Mars, let's say, on the first Mars journey, this would be a spectacular
Si te dijera que esto va a pasar mañana, eso sería muy espectacular. Y mientras tanto tendrías que hacer mucho trabajo para llegar allí.
You have to learn to survive in and how you'll react to them, and it's a huge training and so on and so forth. And Mars is very far
Por
away.
ejemplo, lo que hacen los
from all that
astronautas
training
cuando
on
van
the
al
ground,
espacio,
right?
hacen mucho
But they see Mars, they
entrenamiento
know it
y ellos
exists.
ven Marte, saben
They
que
know that they're going to
existe,
go there.
saben que
And
van a ir
so
ahí.
that part of the journey, if you will,
Así que esa
preparing
parte del
themselves,
viaje
acclimating
para el que te
themselves and so
preparas,
forth, and it doesn't become a deterrent.
no se vuelve un
So you have to see the
impedimento.
goal.
Tienes que ver la meta.
The problem is not really understanding the fact that you're on such a path and it's actually happening to you. Because if you understood, the more you understand
Así
it's
que
actually
si es que
happening to you,
entiendes que eso está sucediendo,
even if it's slow.
incluso si
So
es lento.
it's a question of thinking about it, a question of realization.
Es un tema de realización.
And you take a book like Circle of Friends.
Si tomas libros como Círculo de Amigos,
what are they like?
y vas a saber
How
cómo son
Sukadeva was thinking
ellos,
about them. What's his position?
cuál
Sukadeva,
era
he
la
was
posición de Sukadeva.
Atmarama, right? And then he was just overwhelmed by their
Incluso él, siendo un Atmarama, estuvo
attainment, the kind of
impresionado por ese logro
sacred activities
de
that
los
they
amigos
perform, he said, over
y
how
todas
many
las actividades
lifetimes and how many
sagradas que
holy
ellos
places
performaban.
to attain
Y
this
pensaba
position.
cuántas
So you
vidas
have
les ha
to
tomado llegar a
really
esa posición.
come to grips with
Entonces,
how high it is.
debes
That should
tener en
not be a
cuenta cuán
deterrent
elevado
then.
está
That
esa
should be
posición
encouraging because you are
y
on
que
the
eso
path. That you can be sure of. How can you be sure of that?
no te
Because
desanime,
someone
sino que al
of
contrario, te
spiritual
entusiasme
consequence,
a
your
seguir.
guru, knows about you. My god sister, I
Una de
mentioned
mis hermanas
earlier her book, Vishaka's
espirituales,
book, that I read
no sé si
recently.
ustedes
It's a
conocen
very
el
nice
libro
book,
de Vishaka,
and
es un libro muy bueno.
and she was rather
Y ella,
self-deprecating in a number of ways,
de alguna
and I think
forma,
that she truly felt the way she wrote about her own position, her doubts and so forth, like
ella
intellectual
hablaba de una
doubts
forma muy
about
dura acerca de
the
sí
whole thing, but she was
misma, de algunas
the
dudas
ideas
que
and so forth, but
tenía,
charmed by Prabhupada nonetheless,
pero que aún
and
así estaba muy
believed that
encantada
he
por
had
Prabhupada y
what
pensaba que él tenía
as unbelievable as it was, that
tan
entered into
increíble como fuera,
that realm, if you will.
él podía entrar
And
a ese reino.
I came away from it with a number of thoughts, but one of my thoughts was that
Y bueno, una de las cosas que pienso de esto
Prabhupada,
es que
she knew
Prabhupada,
Prabhupada. She was
ella conocía a Prabhupada,
one of three main photographers for
era una de las
Prabhupada.
de las tres principales
She had
fotógrafas
an
de Prabhupada.
excuse, a camera, to always be around him whenever she was,
Usaba la cámara como una excusa
in
para estar siempre cerca de él,
vicinity of, wherever he was visiting.
donde sea
She could go
que él
on every walk
estuviese
and be at
visitando,
every
ella iba y
darshan
se
and so forth
acercaba y podía
with
tener
the
su
camera,
darshan
right? She was
por la
hiding
cámara,
behind the
¿cierto?
camera.
Entonces,
And giving all of us a window into Prabhupada's
era una ventana para,
activities and so forth through that. But
y para ver a Prabhupada.
it was very apparent that, for example, her husband Yadubar,
Y su
when Prabhupada would
esposo,
meet Yadubar,
Yadubar,
he would ask, "Where is Vishaka? How is Vishaka?" So seeing
Prabhupada le preguntaba a
Yadubar
él
was like an
por
udipana
Vishaka.
for Prabhupada's love
Entonces,
for her.
para Prabhupada, ver al
Prabhupada
esposo de
understood what
ella
it
era
was
como
like
un
for her
udípana
to be a
de su
woman,
amor por Vishaka.
and
Él entendía lo que era ser
in that
mujer
mission, which was not an easy thing
en esa
to do.
misión, lo cual no era algo fácil.
And her, despite,
Y a pesar
I mean, I felt that
de,
I wasn't a woman, but I felt, for example,
yo sentía, por ejemplo,
the persons on the walk who were close to Prabhupada would sometimes be intimidating. What are you
que
doing
muchas
here?
veces
You're not a senior devotee, but I'd go on the walk anyway.
las personas se
I'd
veían
sneak out there somehow
intimidadas
or other. That's
para
one of the reasons
participar
I took sannyas, is that these guys won't bother me anymore. I'll be a sannyasi, then I
de
can go on a
participar en
walk,
las
go into
caminatas con
Prabhupada's
él,
room
de
anytime
que
I
había
want.
gente
It
que
was one
decía,
of my
bueno, ¿por qué estás aquí
motivations.
si no eres un devoto mayor? Y esa fue también una de mis
And
motivaciones
so
para volverme
she was
sanyasi, para
feeling at
poder
another
estar
level
cerca
because
de
she
él y
was a
que nadie
woman.
me dijera
What a
nada.
woman doing? Some of them,
Entonces,
was
algunas
fairly
personas también
sexist
hablaban de esa
environment.
forma acerca de
So
Vishaka, qué está haciendo ella
and
aquí si
Prabhupada
ella es
could
mujer,
understand,
pero Prabhupada podía
what she
entenderlo,
went through, and
todo por lo que
she
pasó.
clearly made an impression upon him. And he loved her.
Y ella
And it comes
causó
out
una
in
muy buena
things
impresión en
like I
él y
said, like
Prabhupada
just
la
seeing
amaba.
Yadubar, he would ask, where's Vishaka?
Entonces,
How is
cada
she?
vez que él veía a su
And they lived apart a lot
esposo,
of the times for
le
the
preguntaba por ella.
services that they had given to them by Prabhupada. So, one of the thoughts, as I say, that I came away with was that a
una de las
dear,
cosas que
dear friend of
pensaba es
Krishna
que si eres un muy querido amigo
loved
de
her.
Krishna,
What more do you want?
si
That's
es que
it.
un muy buen amigo de Krishna la
He
amaba,
made
entonces,
it. It's
qué
not
más
what
quieres? Ya
it's
lo
who you
logró.
know and how they feel about you. And so I felt like so confident of her spiritual
Entonces ella
progress and
tenía
attainment.
mucha
And she would
confianza
always
acerca
speak
de...
about how she wasn't attaining, wasn't attaining.
ella siempre hablaba
She
de
wasn't
no estar
experiencing those things, but she,
logrando lo
believed
que
that Prabhupada
esperaba
was,
o
and
no
she loved
había
Prabhupada,
un progreso, pero realmente si es que
And
un amigo de Krishna
and
te
of
amaba,
course, when she
entonces ya
heard
lo
that,
lograste.
she began to hear through letters from Yadubar that Prabhupada
Entonces luego se
was
escuchaba a
ill,
través de
and
las
it looked
cartas de
like he wouldn't be
Yadubar
with us
que
much longer. So it was very devastating. And he wrote to her, that, well, yeah, he'll be present in his books. His books are the most important thing. And it was one of a couple of occasions in the book where she
en un
made
par
the
de
comment,
ocasiones
which is
en sus
very
libros ella hacía este comentario.
telling. She said, "There's no comparison to reading his books and being with him.
No hay comparación a leer los libros de él que estar con él."
His books. So she had real love for him.
Entonces ella realmente lo amaba a él.
And he loved her.
Y él la amaba a
What
ella.
more do you need? Your life is
¿Y
perfect.
qué más
Hold on to
necesitas? Tu
that.
vida es perfecta.
Grab onto that.
sostente de
know
eso.
who he is, what his position is, and that
Conoce la
you
posición de
have
él,
a
quién es
place in his
él,
life, in his heart or her heart,
y,
guru is maybe the case.
y sé parte de la vida
So
de
those
tu
are some
vida.
thoughts in
Esas son
response to your
algunas
question. I hope
cosas
that
en
helps.
relación a tu pregunta. Espero que ayude. Ya.
There's a follow-up to this from Gayatri.
Hay una pregunta de Gayatri en
Hare
relación a
Krishna,
esto.
Guru
Hare Krishna, Guru
my
Maharaj.
obeisances.
Mis reverencias.
Srimad Bhagavatam
El Srimad
says
Bhagavatam
in
dice
2.5.13 that a person
una
standing before
persona
God and surrender
que
unto
esté
him
ante
can
Dios y
therefore
le preste
not be
reverencias,
bewildered by material nature. So
no,
hearing how you speak on Sadhvi's question,
no
surrender
se
clearly takes
altera con
time.
la realidad material.
But
Entonces,
how
en
do
relación
we,
a
on a
esta pregunta
day-to-day
acerca
basis,
del
surrender
tiempo, ¿cómo
as
nos
not to be bewildered
rendimos
and therefore stray
sin
from our path?
salirnos de nuestro camino?
Yeah, well, there's strength in numbers. So typically this is emphasized
Típicamente entonces se
because
enfatiza porque
if you are associated with other
si te
devotees who are
asocias con otros
serious in their
devotos
practice and
que
so
son
forth,
serios en sus prácticas,
then at the stage in which your
entonces
bhajan or your practice is not steady, anishta
cuando
bhajana kriya,
estés en la
when you're
posición de
down,
Anishta,
somebody else will be
inestable,
up. So they will be an uplifting influence
va a haber
by
una
their example
influencia
and so
que te
forth.
eleve
So
con el
strength
ejemplo de
in
ellos,
numbers. So
etc.
that's why this is
Eso
emphasized.
va
And
a
we
elevar
emphasize, obviously,
estos números.
to associate with saintly persons, but also with peers.
Al estar
If
con
we're,
personas
if we
superiores a
can
nosotros,
situate
pero también
ourselves
con
to have a
nuestros
peer
pares,
group,
debemos
who at least
tener
we
un grupo
meet
que sea
with
par,
regularly
con
and so on and
quien
so
me
forth.
pueda reunir
That's
regularmente.
probably,
Y eso
one of the
probablemente
best
es una de las
remedies for
mejores
the the
remedios
predicament that you
para esta
raise.
situación que has
But
planteado.
yeah, it's also good to know that there
Y
is
también
such
es
a
bueno
stage,
saber que en esa
that you're
etapa
in a bona fide stage. It's called Anishta Bhajana Kriya.
se llama
It's on the
Anishta
map,
Vayana
right?
Kriya. Eso
It's
está
on the map.
reconocido, es
And
fidedigno, está en el mapa.
the road is not, straight there. It has some turns
Y
in
el
it,
camino no es
which are the
totalmente
distractions and so forth.
directo,
I mean,
sino
the
que hay
very
algunas
sadhaka deha,
curvas y en nuestro
it's
sadhaka
compared to
deha
the prakat
se
lila, where
compara
there
al
are,
prakat
where it's
lila,
spiritual, but there are material influences. There are
ya
demons that come into
que
Vrindavan, for example, in the
hay
manifest
ciertas
lila.
influencias.
So there's demons of our
Por
thoughts and
ejemplo, hay
our past
demonios incluso
position and so forth.
en el Braya
So we
Lila.
have to
Hay
recognize
algunas
them and think,
influencias que debemos reconocer
Krishna,
también en nuestro
slayer of
proceso.
Putana, oh Krishna,
Y debemos
slayer of
recordar cómo
Bhavasura, oh
Krishna mató
Balaram,
a
slayer of
Putana
Denakasura.
y a
Do away
todos
with
estos
this
demonios.
influence that is distracting me.
Y que
Mahaprabhu's
a pesar
praise
de que
about this
su influencia
stage
me está distrayendo,
in progress on the Bhakti Marg. In
de progresar en el
Shikshastakam,
Bhakti
when he
Marga,
says, Nam Namakani Bahuda Nidasarva
Chaitanya
Shakti
Mahaprabhu habla de esto en el
Niamitasman
Shikshastakam.
Nenakala. How generous the path is, he
Qué
says,
tan
and
generoso es el camino, dice él.
And how unfortunate I am.
Y qué tan
But in spite of the
desafortunado soy yo
generosity
de
of
que
the
a pesar de esa
name,
generosidad del nombre
its power and its
y
generosity,
su poder y generosidad,
I'm not attracted.
yo
I
no estoy
have
atraída por eso.
non-anurag. I don't have any
No tengo
rag
ningún
or anurag. This is my unfortunate condition. So this is
relación alma
a prayer,
condicionada. Esa es una
to
oración para
embrace in
a la
your
que te puedes aferrar, que puedes abrazar esa oración.
regard to your question, the
En
problem that
relación
you're
a tu
presenting.
pregunta,
You
al
have
problema
to
que estás presentando,
reflect on such and
reflexionar
seek
en eso,
Mahaprabhu's grace at such
en la
times
gracia de
that you might overcome.
Mahaprabhu.
But this is the do and die kind of a stage, as Prabhupada Maharaj used to call it, Bhajana Kriya, that life there. So there are things in the
Bueno, de
way,
eso se trata Vayana
and
Kriya.
ties have to be cut and so forth and so
Hay que
on.
cortar
It's
muchos
not easy to
lazos.
do.
No es fácil de hacer.
So, how not to be distracted.
Entonces, ¿cómo no nos vamos a
Don't give up the
distraer?
practice.
No dejes tu práctica.
You have to stay, to use a sports metaphor, you have to stay in the ballpark anyway, right?
Es como una
Stay in the
metáfora del
ballpark.
deporte, es decir,
And
tienes que
there'll be
mantenerte
some rough
en
waters
el
on the
campo de
sea,
juego.
right? As you're flying towards Sweta Dweep, the white island, the pure island of Goloka. There'll be some rough waters, but stay on the boat, to use another metaphor, stay on the boat.
Mantente en el bote para llegar
And if you've got a
a
good
esa
captain,
isla.
then
Y si tienes un buen capitán,
you can be assured, well, the boat's not going to sink, so I
eso se
just don't
puede
have to jump
asegurar.
off. But
No
you know,
saltes
it's
del
difficult. I mean, it's
barco.
not.
Es difícil.
We have, you know, a trajectory that we've
Tenemos
been
una
on
trayectoria
for a
que
long time.
ha
It's a
continuado
karmic
por un
trajectory and it's a
largo
devotional
tiempo.
trajectory too.
Hay una trayectoria kármica y hay una devocional también.
We've all had some contact with bhakti over
Tienen contacto
lifetimes and so forth.
con
We
el
find
bhakti.
ourselves in this lifetime with the guru and
Y si te
serious
encuentras
practice
con
in the
el
human
guru y
form of life and so
practicantes
forth.
serios,
So,
entonces
you know, what you may consider distracted and so
lo que
forth may
consideres
be, but
una
compared to
distracción puede
what
ser, pero
in other lifetimes where you were
en
at
otras
in terms of
vidas
the equation of the
donde
karmic
estuvieras
trajectory and the devotional
en
trajectory,
relación a
there's a
la
huge,
trayectoria
you've made so
devocional y
much
kármica,
progress. It's
eso
hard for you to
puedes
see because you're right
considerarlo
here.
un
But
gran
if I step back
progreso.
and
Es
look at you at
difícil de
more
verlo
distance, which
con
I
la
do,
mente,
then I
pero
see
desde el
everything's
corazón
okay.
se puede ver así.
Could be better, but it will be better.
Será mejor, puede mejorar y será
Nothing to get
mejor.
neurotic about.
Puedes
You
ponerte
know,
neurótica por eso, pero
to think like
no
that and then
pensar
the
así.
solution is, you know,
La
is to apply
solución
oneself
es dedicarse,
and to get strength to apply oneself. You know,
tener
get
la
help
fuerza
from
para
others,
dedicarse
like-minded devotees, peers, and so forth. And
y mantenerse
of course,
asociado con pares
you know, you take
e
advantage of any
incluso
opportunity to have saintly association.
devotos,
That's why
cualquier tipo de devotos, tener su
I
asociación.
travel here and there, trying to make
Por lo tanto,
myself
yo
available
viajo
because someone can think
para
I'm a
todos
saint.
lados buscando asociarme con devotos.
I try to live up to your expectations.
Trato de
That's the
vivir
best I can do. Okay.
para las expectativas que tienes.
Haribol.
Haribol.
What else?
¿Qué más?
The next question is
La
from
siguiente pregunta
Bhajanananda.
es de Bhajanananda,
from Colombia.
de
He
Colombia.
says, obeisances
Dice
Maharaj.
reverencias
In the
Maharaj.
Uddhava Gita,
En el Uddhava Gita,
Krishna speaks of three
Krishna habla
methods
de
of
tres
worship:
métodos de adoración:
Vedic, Tantric, and
védico,
mixed.
tántrico y
What
combinado.
distinguishes one method
¿Qué
from
distingue
another?
un método
Does
del
the
otro?
difference lie in the
Esta
scripture
diferencia
each
reside
system follows,
en la
or
escritura
solely in the practitioner's
o en
attitude? Thank
o en
you.
la actitud del practicante.
You know, I never studied the Uddhava Gita. It's
Nunca he
something that
estudiado
I
el Uddhava
should
Gita,
do.
es
So I'm
algo
not
que yo
familiar
debería
with that
hacer.
verse,
No estoy
what the
familiarizado con ese
commentaries may
verso
say.
o con lo que dice el
But
comentario, pero
there are
eh,
scriptural texts, the
hay
Vedic text, the
textos
Tantric text. Tantric's
védicos
kind of the
y también tántricos,
the texts in which the Shakti is emphasized.
en los que se enfatiza Shakti,
Relatively speaking, more than the Shaktiman, which is more the emphasis on the Vedic.
más que el Shaktiman,
Vedic
que es
side.
el énfasis
With regard to our
del lado
particular
védico,
practice, which is pertinent.
que es también
It's
pertinente para
mentioned in the
nuestro lado de la
Bhagavatam that
práctica. Y se menciona en el Bhagavatam,
in the verse that precedes,
en el verso que
three
precede,
verses that speak about Chaitanya
los tres
Mahaprabhu,
versos
beginning
que
with
hablan de
Krishna
Chaitanya
Manas
Mahaprabhu.
Krishnam Sango Pangastra Pashadam Yagnaisan Kirtana Praya Yajantihi Sumedasa. Speaking of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Kali Yuga avatar, two successive verses
Mahaprabhu es
to that
el
one as
avatar
well.
de
But
Kali
those
Yuga.
three verses are preceded
Estos
by
tres versos son precedidos
two lines
por dos líneas
from the
del
previous verse.
verso
Nana
previo.
Tantra Vidhanena Kalo something. So in Kali Yuga, mostly the practices will be
Kali
drawn,
Yuga,
says Nana Tantra Vidhana, from the Tantra.
la mayoría de las prácticas serán
Like,
sacadas
that
desde el
means
Tantra.
Gotamiya
Eso
Tantra,
significa
Krishna Yamala, these type of texts and so forth.
Textos tántricos,
where there's emphasis on
donde se enfatiza
on the Shakti. This is a
más
very
Shakti.
prominent feature
Es una cualidad muy
Gaudiya
prominente
theology and philosophy.
de la
Shakti.
teología, es Shakti.
Again, without looking at the commentaries,
Entonces, sin ver los comentarios,
I would say
yo diría
it's a bit of a mix there.
Que hay una combinación ahí, pero
yeah, it's not just a question of the disposition, which is
no es un tema solo de disposición,
that the path is outlined.
Porque si su práctica está fuera de lugar, entonces
to the tantric path. And there are, of course, divisions within the tantric path also. There's the right-handed tantric and the left-handed.
Hay un camino de la mano derecha y de la mano izquierda del tantra.
You know, one is kind of
Uno es
Satvik and what is kind of
sádvico
tamasic.
y el otro es
So
tamásico.
obviously, we don't follow the latter with regard to
Entonces,
the Tantra.
sí,
But
uno se puede caer
yeah,
de
I
esa
would say
posición siguiendo el
probably
Tantra.
ours would be considered a mix. But the paths are, they're outlined in the scripture. So
Pero los caminos
it's not just a
se
disposition.
muestran
You
en las
have to follow the
escrituras.
path.
Entonces debes tener la
And
disposición de
there's
seguir
the
ese
map,
camino,
right?
porque está el mapa.
So hope that helps.
Así que espero que eso ayude.
The next question is
La siguiente
from
pregunta
Brigupad. Would you like to
es de
unmute yourself,
Brigupad.
Brigupad?
Hare Krishna, Dandavat
Hare
Pranam Guru
Krishna,
Maharaj.
Dandavat Pranam
Yes.
Guru Maharaj.
Recently, I was reading
Estuve leyendo recientemente
Vyasaki Prabhu's Radha Damodar Vilas.
Mhm.
The second volume in that
el
series,
segundo
I don't know if
volumen
any more
de esa
volumes came out, but
serie
the second one covers the years
y
approximately
habla
72 to 74, if I remember
de
correctly.
los años 72 y
And
74.
And it's a very interesting historical
Y
overview
es muy, muy
of
interesante esa visión
of the
histórica
Leelas with these
de los
deities, but
lilas con
also
estas
kind of
deidades
everything that happened in North America
y
during
también
those
todo lo que
years.
pasó en Norteamérica
And
durante esos años.
a big theme in
Y
that
un gran
volume
equipo en
is the
ese
growth
volumen
of book distribution,
es el
where
crecimiento
you,
de
of course, Guru Maharaj,
de la
are
distribución de
an
libros, de
important
lo cual usted,
player,
Guru Maharaj,
and that comes out also
era
nicely in
un
the book.
participante. Y,
But he's also, in that
pero
book, he's also
también en
showing
ese
some
libro
of the
muestra algunos
less kind of positive things that were
de las
happening in
cosas
those
un poco
years.
menos positivas que sucedieron en
This
esos años.
misogyny that you were
La
mentioning before
misoginia
comes up
que comentó
quite
anteriormente,
clearly.
que aparecía muy
And
claramente.
also his kind
Y
of take, and
también
that's of course only one
su
person's
propia
understanding,
visión, que
but
por
his
supuesto que es el entendimiento de una
take
persona,
on the whole book distribution
pero su visión acerca de la distribución de
project
libros
is that
proyecta
in the long run,
que
it
en el
was
largo plazo
something that was actually quite damaging, not only for ISKCON as an institution,
fue
but also
algo
for individual
que fue
devotees.
dañino
So I
para
was
la
interested in
institución y para
hearing
algunos
your
devotos.
view
Entonces quería saber
on
su
all of this,
visión
kind of from
acerca de todo
hindsight.
esto. ¿Cuál es su punto de vista?
What do you think about this whole
¿Qué
kind of
piensa
book
acerca
distribution
de esa distribución de libros
of those years?
a través de los
Well, I'll
años?
say this. I don't know what he means
Yo no sé qué quiere
by
decir él
the idea that it was
con la idea de
damaging
que
to
fue
those who
dañina para
participated.
aquellos que
I can
participaron en
understand what he
ella.
means by what might be
Puedo
damaging,
comprender por qué puede
in the
ser
larger sense to the
dañino
mission,
para la
to
misión
the
a grandes rasgos,
impression that
cuanto a la
it give of the
impresión
mission
que
to people. So
causó
then I'll comment
para
about
algunas
that.
personas.
But as far as the individuals who are involved in that,
Pero para
and
los
I know
individuos
many
que
of them, and they
participaron en
all know
eso,
me,
de los cuales yo
and
conozco
I mean, I
muchos,
was just
incluido
giving a
yo,
program yesterday,
y yo estuve haciendo un programa
and one of my
ayer,
god sisters down
y
there,
una de mis
Auntie
hermanas
Davy, was there. She was a book
estaba ahí,
distributor,
y era una distribuidora de libros,
in the context of
y en el
speaking,
contexto de hablar,
I mentioned something about book
mencioné algo
distribution in
acerca de
relation
la
to
distribución de
compassion and so forth. And she
libros,
began to weep,
y
and
ella empezó a
afterwards she
llorar,
came to speak with me,
y luego se acercó a hablar conmigo,
she just told me what
y me dijo
it meant to
que
her,
todo lo
those
que
days
significó
in book
para ella
distribution, how
esos días
important
de
it
la
was, how
distribución de
just
libros,
remembering them, and she's like having
solo
ecstatic
por el hecho
symptoms, just by
de recordarlos.
being the Udipana, reminding
Era un
her.
udípana que
There's
le
some
recordaba a
scars for
ella
that.
algunos samskaras para
Some
eso.
scars will come out if you're in the
Los
condition
samskaras surgen si tienes la condición
that draws them out, right?
que los atrae.
So that's how
Entonces,
most devotees who were involved in that.
así es como la
These
mayoría
were
de los
very,
devotos se
very
involucraron
sincere
con
people who
eso.
were really
Y era gente
trying their
muy, muy
best to please
sincera que hizo
Prabhupada.
su
Was
mejor
their
esfuerzo
only
para
motive for
complacer a
going out. I
Prabhupada.
mean, there was some cases in which
En
some
algunos
individuals would be
casos no
proud
era así, algunos
and
eran más
be focused
orgullosos
on,
y se
getting
enfocaban
recognition for the
en
number
obtener
of books they sold and so
reconocimiento
forth.
de
But
cuántos libros
that was not
vendieron,
by any
pero,
means the
pero eso
majority.
no era la mayoría
The
para
majority
nada.
were
La mayoría
simple devotees,
eran
rank and
simples
file, who
devotos
were going out, and they gained a lot from that. Those years, those times, that was
obtuvieron
a
mucho
very,
de
very
eso.
intense
Fueron años muy
austerity.
intensos y
And it was
austeros.
constant. It was like, in order to do it,
Y
you
era
had to rise in the
constante.
morning
debías levantarte en las
I started to
mañanas.
rise at 3 in the morning.
Yo me levantaba a las 3 de la
Rupanuga,
mañana
who
y
was a
Rupanuga,
GBC, he said to me,
que era
Bhakta,
uno del
you have to be careful what
GBC,
you say, because whatever you say, every brahmachari in North
debes
America
tener
is
cuidado con lo
going
que
to do.
dices,
If you say, I only eat oatmeal, they will only eat oatmeal.
porque si tú
Because
dices yo
that's
solo voy a comer avena,
was
entonces
part
todos
of
los
his
brahmacharis van a
success, how he
empezar
goes out and,
a comer avena,
and
porque
successful
ellos
in his
veían que
service.
todo lo que hacía era
So
exitoso,
it
entonces lo
was,
imitaban.
that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's
Eso es
like
un poco
that.
una
I started to
exageración,
rise
pero
at 3 in the morning,
yo me comencé a
chant
levantar a
all
las
my
3 de la
rounds
mañana,
before
cantar todas mis
Mangalarti,
rondas antes
then
del
go to
Mangalarti,
Mangalarti, so they have an
luego ir al
hour
Mangalarti,
to read
porque así tenía una hora para leer
on my own
por mi propia cuenta
before going to the class,
antes de ir a la clase.
right? The Degi Prashadam, and then you were pretty searching 6 to 8 hours, a day with
Y luego había 6 o 7 horas
Tamrita and so forth. So
del
it was very
día.
intense.
Bueno, pero era
Not
muy
only its
intenso
distribution, but the
esa
kind of the
distribución de
lifestyle
libros. Era un
that
estilo de vida
became the standard, the norm,
que se volvió el estándar, la
doing that
norma
service
para
largely.
mí en ese
And so
servicio.
they got a lot of
Entonces,
experience out of that.
obtuve
A
mucha
lot of deep
experiencia por
spiritual
eso,
bliss. And
mucha
it's hard to
dicha.
argue with your bliss, your own bliss, right?
Entonces,
If
no
doubt
se
should come up
puede,
later on,
no puedes argumentarle a tu propia
you can
dicha.
remember your bliss and think,
Tú
well,
simplemente lo recuerdas.
that in and of itself should retire the doubt. So that's one point.
Entonces,
I
ese es un
think
punto.
I have not met any individuals
No he
who were
conocido
damaged by
a gente
that.
que haya sido
I don't know
dañada
exactly what he meant,
por eso. No sé
but that's
realmente a qué se
on the one
refiere.
side.
Pero
There
eso
may have
es
been
un lado.
persons who were
Puede haber
damaged
personas
as kind
que
of
fueron
collateral damage
dañadas,
because they
fue
weren't
como
book distributors,
un daño
maybe,
colateral,
and
y
maybe
probablemente no eran distribuidores de
they
libros,
were
tal vez eran,
thought less of themselves or
y tal
something to
vez
that effect. And
pensaban mal de ellos mismos.
I'm only speculating,
No
right?
estoy especulando,
But I didn't think like that.
pero yo no
Persons who
pensaba
weren't
así
distributing the books. I was thinking
acerca de las personas que
very
distribuían
fortunate to be able to
libros.
stay in the temple all day long, worship the
Eran muy
deities, cook
afortunados
for them, and so on and so forth. I
porque
thought
se
they
quedaban con las
were the
deidades
blessed
y les
ones.
cocinaban.
I was going out I had to get purified because
Yo salía
Krishna
para
wanted to stay in the
purificarme
temple all day
porque
with him.
Krishna no me dejaba quedarme en el
So,
templo.
and that's the one side. Now, as far as
Ese es un lado, entonces,
the picture to the public, for example, which I guess is, one of the points he's emphasizing. We had only
teníamos
Prabhupada's opinion to go
solamente
on,
la
really.
opinión de
The
Prabhupada
book distributors and those who were involved in that.
acerca de los
And these
distribuidores de
kind of
libros.
things were brought up to Prabhupada
Y ese tipo de
numerous
cosas
times.
se llevaban a Prabhupada muchas
That people are
veces,
getting a bad impression.
de que la gente se estaba teniendo una mala
We
impresión.
were selling books in the Chicago airport. It was a big hub
Vendíamos
in the nation.
libros en el
Airports.
aeropuerto de Chicago
So
porque
many
había
people
mucha
stopped over
gente
there, to go
que
somewhere
se
else and so
detenía
forth.
ahí y iba a otros
And you
lados.
practically couldn't get through the airport without
Y
being, asked once or
prácticamente
twice, for a
no
book.
podías pasar
In fact,
por
there
el
was a
aeropuerto
famous
sin
basketball
que te
team called the Chicago
pregunten
Bulls, professional team. And
por
they used to come to the airport and they created a defense, one of their defenses in their schemes for
que
playing
le
basketball.
pregunten
And they call it the Hare Krishna defense. Nobody can get through. So,
perdón,
we were
no
a
se
little
podía pasar por el
overbearing
aeropuerto
in that
sin que les
regard,
ofrecieran
right?
libros.
And surely some
Que
people
incluso un
were
equipo de
perhaps put off by
básquetbol de
that.
los Chicago Bulls
But that kind
le
of thing was
llamaba a su
brought up to
defensa la
Prabhupada on
defensa
numerous
Hare Krishna
occasions.
porque nadie podía
And then
pasar
Prabhupada had once
sin
said,
sin
stop
pasarlos
it.
por alto a
We would have
ellos.
stopped it immediately. The only reason we were doing it is because Prabhupada wanted us to sell
Pero
the
la
books.
única razón por
Somehow or
lo que lo
other, he
hacíamos
himself
así
invoked
era
the
porque a
term,
Prabhupada le
by hook or by
gustaba.
crook, sell the book. So, I wasn't one to argue with Prabhupada about it.
¿Alguna vez
I
estuve
didn't know any better,
discutiendo con
so
Prabhupada
we
acerca de
went out
eso?
and did what as best we could,
Lo mejor que
sincerely, only with the aim
podíamos,
of pleasing him, and there can only be
solamente
benefit from that.
para
And when it was
complacerlo.
brought up to him, and it was brought up to him on numerous occasions
Y
by
en
other
numerosas
devotees who
ocasiones se
were
le dijo,
in some leadership position and weren't personally
incluso en
involved in
posiciones
the
de
book distribution.
liderazgo.
And I'll give you an example. I mean,
Te
I
daré un
remember once some
ejemplo.
devotee said that property, Trip Primers is selling books here in such and such place, and
Una vez le dijeron,
and
tipo,
some of
Maharaj
the
está vendiendo
authority, I think it
libros
was like
aquí
in
y
the airport, the
allá,
authorities are upset at the
y las autoridades están molestas por
approaching
eso,
people and
por
so on and
acercarse a
so
la
forth.
gente y todo
A little
eso,
bit outgoing, aggressive in a
porque
way.
piensan que es un poco
And Prabhupada said,
agresivo. Y Prabhupada
if
dijo,
nobody is disturbed, there's no preaching going on.
Si a nadie le molesta, entonces
That
no
was
hay
his,
prédica.
these are, by hook or by crook, sell the book. I mean, these are the things that how he was responding
Entonces, así era como
constantly,
él
repeatedly,
contestaba
to any of these type
repetidamente
of
a este tipo
objections.
de
He
objeciones.
would say any publicity
Él
is good
decía,
publicity. So
cualquier
I ended
publicidad
up
es buena
thinking of
publicidad.
it as a period of spiritual
Entonces yo
terrorism.
esto lo veía como una
That's how
suerte
I
de
kind of looked
terrorismo
at it. I mean, I
espiritual.
don't
Así es como lo
disagree
vi.
that it could have been done. There was maybe another
No
way to
estoy en
do it. I
desacuerdo
don't think
en
there
que
was
tal vez se
another way
pudo
to
haber
do it.
hecho de otra
You
forma,
can
pero
look
tal vez
back
no
and
había
think
otra
if we had
forma de
done
hacerlo.
it was a time when
Era un tiempo en el que,
it's not the best example,
no el
but
mejor
Yasser
ejemplo, pero
Arafat was, one of the original Palestinian, terrorists.
había unos
And of course, his
terroristas
policy was our cause needs to be heard somehow
que
or other.
decían
And
que,
if
bueno,
it
nuestra
means
causa
that
tiene
there's
que
other
ser
people that are going
oída,
to suffer for it, well, we're
y estos
suffering,
son
and our cause is not getting any attention, and it's
nuestra
important.
causa no está
And so
teniendo
we're going to do
atención,
terrorism,
entonces vamos a ser
And so there was a
terroristas.
period where he was the leading terrorist in the world, but eventually he became
Pero eventualmente
the president of Palestine or something
él
like
se
that. He
volvió
had
el
a seat
presidente de
at the
Palestina,
UN, so things changed. So I think
y bueno, las cosas cambian.
it was a necessary period.
Yo siento que era un periodo necesario.
And it happened by Krishna's
Eso
arrangement like
sucedió
that.
por arreglo de
And
Krishna.
it can be whatever downside there may be to that, it can be made up for over time. And I think devotees have done that, so
Y los devotos
I
lo han
think
hecho,
ISKCON
sí.
devotees are still, book distribution is, a popular thing, but it's not like it used to be. And I think they have tables. I know that
Creo
my
que
Godbrother Vaisheshika, who was one of the men on my party, he's just down the street from us in the South Bay, and he has a temple, and for ISKCON, he's a guru there, I think, and they go out with a table, and people come up, and it's a more acceptable, if you will. So I think they've evolved.
Bueno, creo que eso ha
I don't think
evolucionado.
the image of the Krishna
No
consciousness
creo que la
movement in
imagen de la
America
conciencia de Krishna en América sea.
People are being born all the time, growing up, they know nothing about it, and so forth.
Hay gente que
But
nace y no tiene
I agree
idea
there
de
was
eso.
there was a downside to it.
Creo que fue algo
And
malo, pero
it was also the main
pero también era
fundraising arm for
la
opening so many temples,
principal
for
fuente de
building Krishna Balaram
ingresos
temple. So I mean, you can
para
fault it,
construir el
but
templo de Krishna Balaram, por ejemplo,
Ayasaki is a
en
nice enough
Vrindavan.
person to be
Entonces,
used in India, for the most part, doing bhajans and so forth. There wouldn't be a Krishna Balaram temple if it wasn't for
no habría un templo de
the
Krishna
book
Balaram
distribution
si no
on
fuese por la
my
distribución
particular
de libros
group of devotees.
y
At one point,
particularmente de mi grupo de
our party,
devotos.
we had about 7 or 8 devotees. We were collecting more money than any temple in North America or Europe or
Eran 7
anywhere
u
in the
8
world.
devotos que
And
recolectaban más dinero que
$80,000 a month,
cualquier
giving it all
otro
to
grupo de
Prabhupada, to the
personas
book fund, which was all
para
being sent to
ISKCON.
build the Krishna Balaram. That's
Y
just
todo
one
eso se
example. So
enviaba para construir el
Prabhupada, I think
templo de Krishna Balaram.
he weighed it out in his mind, and he
Y en
thought,
su
this is
mente
working right now.
pensaba,
Let's
esto
get
está funcionando
this
ahora,
on
eso
the
es bueno.
map.
Estamos en
And
el mapa.
then he had confidence that it would,
Y tuvo la confianza
integrate
de integrar
more in
más
time
en el
with the
tiempo
society
con
and
la
be more
sociedad, integrarse en la
acceptable and so
sociedad.
forth. And I think that ISKCON devotees
Y creo que los
probably
devotos
have that kind
de
of
ISKCON
approach,
pueden tener ese
largely
tipo
now. And
de
so
acercamiento
I
ahora.
guess I differ a little bit from
Entonces yo
the way
siento que
you
difiero un
presented what
poco.
he said there.
No he leído el libro, pero
Those are my thoughts.
esos son mis pensamientos.
Book distribution, Kijai.
Distribución de libros, Kijai.
Okay. What else?
Thanks, Guru Maharaj. So just for the next question, we had a request if you could slow your speaking a little for the translation team.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I keep forgetting.
And so the next question is from Kanuram.
Siguiente pregunta es de Kanuram.
Good morning, Guru Maharaj.
Buenos días, Guru Maharaj.
I was thinking about the windows of opportunity that come
Pensaba
from
en
Lord
las ventanas de
Chaitanya and Lord
oportunidad que vienen
Nityananda,
del Señor Chaitanya y Señor
and sort of how
Nityananda
they relate to
y cómo se
like
relacionan
Sakya Ras.
con
So,
Sakya Ras.
Maybe I'm in the weeds, but
Tal vez estoy un poco
I was thinking
perdido,
about
pero
how
Pensaba
the window of opportunity that comes from Lord
la
Chaitanya is
ventana de
like
oportunidad que viene del Señor Chaitanya
sounds like Manjari Bhav,
suena
and
como
then
Manjari
the window
Bhav,
of opportunity
y
that comes from
luego
Lord Nityananda is
la
Sakyaras, but there
ventana que
are
viene de
like
parte
4
del Señor
different
Nityananda suena
types.
como Sakyaras, entonces
And
son
you've
dos lados
given some
diferentes
emphasis
o
to
dos
like
vistas distintas.
the Priyanarma Sakas, but I was
Y
thinking that, like Lord Nityananda himself is not a Priyanarma Saka.
yo
So
pensaba,
can
bueno,
you
el
talk
Señor
about that a
Nityananda
little bit,
no es
like
realmente un
how
Priyanarma
those windows
Saka,
of opportunity
cómo
are opened, and
estas
I
dos
guess
ventanas se
is the window of
abren
opportunity for Sakyaras
la
like
ventana para
open to all
Sakyaras
4 types of Sakya?
se abre para
Mhm.
los 4 tipos de
Well,
Sakya.
first of all,
Bueno,
it's my
primero que
term,
todo,
obviously, the windows of opportunity that
es mi término hablar
are presented in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. I think
de
there's
ventanas de
there are
oportunidad.
those are the main opportunities, the main windows of opportunity in terms of the
Entonces, son
depth of Chaitanya
estas
Mahaprabhu's
principales ventanas
tradition.
para
But as
entrar
we know, and as
en
often
las
mentioned,
profundidades
there's a breadth also to Chaitanya
de Chaitanya
Mahaprabhu's
Mahaprabhu, ya que también tiene una
dispensation,
amplitud
which
en su
can
dispensación, pero también tiene una profundidad
provide
que
windows
provee
of opportunity
ventanas de
for
oportunidad para
jivas who have
las jivas
other destinies, and I have seen that happen.
de otros
I've
destinos.
seen
Y yo he visto eso.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, particularly through our Paribar, the Bhakti Vinod Paribar,
Desde
pick
la
up people who
Parivar
become
de Bhakti
initiated
Vinod,
members
viene
and so forth,
gente,
who
se
then in
inicia,
time
y luego con el tiempo
find themselves attracted to
se encuentran
Vaikuntha.
atraídos por Vaikunta.
And that type of worship that is then
Y el tipo de
more the
adoración
focus
que
of
se enfoca
the Madhva Sampradaya or the Ramanuja
en la
Sampradaya,
Madhva
Vaidhi Marg
Sampradaya o
Sampradayas,
Ramanuja
for example.
Sampradaya.
And then they get
Y luego
association there and so on and
buscan
so
asociación
forth.
ahí, etcétera.
And so
Entonces,
there's the breadth of
hay una
the
amplitud
mission.
en la
I've seen it happen
misión.
with the Balaba Sampradaya also. I've seen
He visto
persons
esto
come
también
into
en la
Gaudiya
Vallabha
Sampradaya,
Sampradaya. Hay gente que llega a la Gaudiya Sampradaya,
captured by the
es
by the
capturada
breadth, if you
por
will,
la
of
amplitud
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's
de Chaitanya
dispensation, and then
Mahaprabhu y
end
su
up
dispensación.
in the Balaba Sampradaya. I know
Y también
a
en la
couple of
Vallabha
the one famous
Sampradaya.
scholar,
Hay un
David
académico muy
Haberman, became
famoso
a Balaba, although he
que
was
se
originally.
volvió un Vallabha.
His interest in
Su interés en
Vaishnavism came through
el
Gaudiya
Vaishnavismo
Vaishnavism.
lo
So
llevó al Gaudiya Vaishnavismo.
that's there. But obviously,
Eso
yes,
está ahí, pero
Nityananda
sí,
Prabhu is Balaram
Nityananda Prabhu
himself,
es
Chaitanya
Balaram
Mahaprabhu is
mismo,
Krishna
Chaitanya
himself, and
Mahaprabhu es
Krishna
Krishna mismo,
pursuing
y Krishna
the
buscando
experience
la experiencia
of himself
de sí
from
mismo
Radha's vantage point.
desde el punto de vista de
And
Radha,
so Radha Bhav.
Radha Bhav.
So
Entonces,
given that about Chaitanya
debido a
Mahaprabhu,
eso, sobre
yes,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sí,
in a sense,
en un sentido,
ideal of
el
this
ideal
particular type of
de
Madhurya
este tipo
Rasa,
particular de Madhurya
Manjari
Rasa,
Bhav,
Manjari Bhav,
he's the window.
él es la
Nityananda Prabhu
ventana.
window for Sakya Rasa.
Nityananda
That doesn't mean that
Prabhu,
they're not
ventana
overlapping
para
in
Sakya
some
Rasa.
respects
Eso no quiere
also.
decir que
They
no
are,
se
after all.
sobrepongan.
In Sakya Rasa we worship
En Sakya Rasa
Krishna and Balaram,
adoramos Krishna y Balaram.
and Narmasakas worship Radha and
Y
Krishna as
los
well.
Narmasakas
What could be a better
también
example
adoran a Radha
than
y Krishna.
Gauridas Pandit?
No hay mejor
He's the
ejemplo que
original,
Gauridas Pandit.
worshipper of
Él es
Gauritai
el
deities, and
adorador
by his
original
own statement,
de
Gauritai
las
agreed,
deidades de Gauritai,
to go into every home, right, practically.
y eso permitió que
Chaitanya
estuvieran en
Mahaprabhu
cada
said to
hogar
him, you're
prácticamente.
making such effort to worship the deities
Y él
of
hacía un
ourselves,
esfuerzo tan
Lord
grande
Nityananda,
para servir
it
las
pains me.
deidades.
In this avatar, then my worship is very simple, just to
Pero eso le dolía a Gauritai y les decían que no, esto debe ser mucho más simple, que todos lo puedan hacer.
What's that? He wanted to worship him, with the finest cooking and so forth. Anybody can do
Porque
it.
él quería adorarlos con la cocina más fina, pero le dijeron no, que sea que se puede hacer en todos lados, que fuera más sencillo. Entonces,
that said,
dicho eso,
and they would show themselves as Gauritai deities, as
se
Krishna
mostraron
and
como
Balaram, right?
deidades de
But
Krishna,
at the end of his
de
life, Gauridas Pandit went to Vrindavan,
Gauritai,
worship
pero
Radha and
luego
Krishna. Likely his deities told him
Gauridas
to do
Pandit
so.
fue a Vrindavan a
And that's
adorar
where his
a
samadhi is,
Krishna,
in
deidades de Krishna, y
Vrindavan.
es allá donde está su
So,
samadhi en
there's
Vrindavan.
some overlapping there, especially with regard to the Narmasakas, right?
Entonces,
Influenced by Madhurya Rasa.
estas dos ventanas se juntan, especialmente con las Narmasakas.
And And if you want to attain
Y si quieres lograr
Manjari Bhav, this
Manjari
ideal,
Bhav,
then
esos
Arakovini
ideales,
Daichandir Karuna Hoyeve Samsara Vasanamo Kobetucha Hove. Or Narottam says elsewhere, what
como dice Narottam Das,
Radha Krishna without there's no rasa at all without going through
no hay ningún
Nityananda
rasa si es que no vas a través de
getting this
Nityananda
grace
Ram.
and so forth. So I just want to say there's some overlapping as you presented it was a little
Así
more
que
really
tú lo estabas
strong
presentando de una forma más
lines
como
drawn.
dos líneas
But
dibujadas,
yes, those windows
pero
are the
sí,
main windows of opportunity, and
pero
what we
esas son ventanas de
mean by that
oportunidad
also,
en
I'm
las
trying
que
to slow
podemos
down now,
entrar
so I'm
también.
remembering that I should try to slow down my speech a little bit for
Tengo que
the
recordar, hablar un poco más
translation.
lento para la traducción.
Forgive me. What I mean by
Lo que
that
quiero decir
is
con
that
eso
we
es
have
que tenemos
examples
ejemplos
of that ideal, of
de ese
pursuing that,
ideal
and
para
we have great
perseguir
devotees who
y
have
tenemos grandes
spoken
devotos
about the
que han
path, who've
hablado
written
acerca de este camino
songs
y han escrito
with
canciones
those
con estos
feelings, the feelings of Manjari
sentimientos, los
Bhav in
sentimientos de
them, for
Manjari Bhav,
example,
por
or of Sakya
ejemplo,
Bhav
o
and
de
so
Sakya
forth.
Bhav, por
And that's
ejemplo.
one of the reasons, of
Y esa
course,
es una de
why
las
I wrote
razones por las que yo escribí
Circle of Friends,
Círculo de
because that
Amigos,
window of
porque esa ventana de
opportunity
oportunidad
had been obscured
había
to
sido
some extent, where
oscurecida en
to
alguna
the point
medida,
where it was thought by many devotees that there's no place for
de que muchos
Sakya
devotos decían no hay lugar para el
Vaishnavism,
Sakya Rasa en el Gaudiya
wasn't true.
Vaishnavismo,
So
pero eso no era cierto.
Nityananda Prabhu, right, he
Así
collected
que Nityananda
up
Prabhu
his eternal associates, the
colectó a sus
Dvasagopals,
asociados,
and
los
they were his
Dvasagopals,
chief assistants for
y,
his wide
y
campaign
ellos
on
fueron
behalf of
asistentes para
Chaitanya
su amplia
Mahaprabhu.
campaña, para difundir la campaña de
And
Mahaprabhu.
and they all had Sakyaras lineages. Now, to your question,
Ahora, de
all
acuerdo a
of
tu
them,
pregunta, todos ellos,
these Dwadasagopals,
los
they were either
Dvadasagopals,
Narmasakas
eran
or
Narmasakas,
Priyanarmasakas
o
or
Priyanarmasakas,
Priyasakas.
o Priyasakas.
Priyasakas means that they
Priyasaka
have
significa
only
que tienen
Sakyabhav.
solo Sakyabhav.
Priyanarmasakas have Sakyabhav
Priyanarmasakas tienen Sakyabhav
influenced by Madhurya,
influenciado por Madhurya,
right?
¿cierto?
So these are
Entonces,
all of these Dwadasagopals, no
los
matter how
Dvadasagopal,
you make the list,
de los cuales
and
yo
there are
hice una
different lists where
lista
they are and so
que
forth,
está en el
they all
libro,
fall within these two categories.
y
So we should
donde
look
ellos caen
to,
en ambas
as
categorías.
far as the window of opportunity,
La primera ventana de
such
oportunidad
details, right?
nos
That
da esos
the
detalles.
main assistants
La
of
asistencia
Nityananda Ram,
principal de
who
Nityananda
started
Ram,
these
quienes
Sakyaras
comenzaron
lineages, they
estos,
were all started either from the vantage point of or the bhav of a Priyasaka or a
ya
Priyanarmasaka.
sea
And amongst them, for that
desde
matter,
el sentir de un
Prabhupada,
Dharmasaka o
my Guru
Priyanarmasaka,
Maharaj, whose
y mi
affinity
Guru
for
Maharaj,
Sakyaras is clear,
y su afinidad por Sakyaras
was
era
born in
clara. Él nació
a Sakyaras family,
en
if you
una
will,
familia de
whose
Sakyarasa,
patron saint was
cuyo santo
Udarandatta
patrono
Thakur,
era
who is
Udarandatta Thakur,
in Krishna Lila Subbahu
quien era Subbahu en el
Gopa,
Krishna
who was
Lila,
a
Subbahu
Narmasaka,
Gopa, un Narmasaka,
Priyanarmasaka.
Priyanarmasaka.
So
Entonces,
an intelligent devotee,
un devoto
a astute devotee will
inteligente
understand, oh, this is coming to me.
entiende,
If I have some affinity for Sakyaras, let
hay
me
una
get
afinidad
some
para
clarity on that.
Sakyarasa, entonces
This is a
puedo
way
tener
to
más
find
claridad
that,
acerca de eso, y esta es una
to
forma
find
de
that
descubrirlo,
clarity.
de encontrar esa
And then
claridad.
from a theoretical point
Y
of
desde un
view,
punto de vista teórico,
one could orient oneself
uno puede
accordingly.
orientarse
Now,
a sí mismo.
if your destiny should be to
Pero
be a Priyasaka instead,
si
or
tu
another type of
destino es
Saka,
ser
it
un
will come out,
Priyasaka,
no
en
harm.
realidad,
Best to follow
eso
the
también va a
lead,
aparecer.
if you will.
Debes seguir
It's what's
esa,
possible that any
seguir la
one of the
guía,
four types of Sakas
cualquiera de los cuatro
one
tipos de sakas
could attain their
que se pueden lograr.
swabhav, their inherent nature. I mean,
Ahí hay un
this is
bhav,
the
una naturaleza inherente
powerful kind of
que es muy poderosa
response
y
of
responde
Sanatana Goswami to the
a
question, why is it that some devotees pursue one
Sanatana Goswami
rasa and some
responde a esa pregunta de
pursue and
por qué
attain
algunos
another
buscan un rasa u
rasa?
otro.
The question is there in Brihad Bhagavatamrita.
La pregunta está ahí en el
And he
Brihad
answers
Bhagavatamrita
that
y él la contesta.
each jiva has his
Cada
own
jiva
swabhav,
tiene su propio
and
swabhav.
and the will of Krishna
Y la
is
voluntad de
deeper
Krishna
than
es más profunda
millions of oceans
que millones de
who could
océanos.
understand it. But basically,
Pero básicamente,
he desires to accept
él desea
service in
aceptar
different
servicio
ways.
en
Therefore,
diferentes
there are
formas.
different devotees
Por lo
attain
tanto,
different
diferentes
rasas,
devotos logran
and how we would
diferentes
like to
razas.
accept
Y cómo
service
nos
from a
gustaría,
particular
cómo le gustaría
jiva
aceptar el
corresponds with
servicio
their
de
swabha
cada
means
jiva. Y eso
inherent nature.
responde con
Inherent nature is
su
not something that's
naturaleza
bestowed.
inherente. Eso no es algo que se entrega.
Inherent nature, it's not, you
Una
don't
naturaleza
bestow,
inherente es algo
the jiva has
que
qualities.
tiene la jiva. La jiva
They're
es una
not
cualidad de la
potential
jiva.
to have
Que no son
qualities if someone gives them to you.
a veces hay un
you're not a
potencial
carbon
y alguien te puede dar
battery.
algo.
That's another example someone gave. Anyway, I'm getting off a little bit on a tangent here, but the jiva is an
Pero
enjoyer,
la jiva
a knower, a doer.
es un conocedor,
That's
es el
all
que
has to do with
nace.
personhood, right? These are
Todo eso
not
tiene
things
que
that
ver
could
con una
potentially be
personalidad,
distributed.
con una
Inherently
persona.
are those things. He's
No es
inherently
una
is a doer.
potencialidad porque ya es todas esas
In order
cosas.
to do, in order to know, in order to
Para
feel,
saber o para
he
hacer
requires some
o
shakti.
para hacer, se necesita algún
He
Shakti.
draws on the material shakti, jiva maya,
Y eso nos lleva a Jiva Maya
to function in this regard.
para funcionar en relación a esto, en la vida material.
On the Swarup Shakti. That's the whole meaning of Tatastha.
Ese es el significado de
have a
Tatastha.
nature. And it will come out, right?
Eso
But
va
the
a
fact that we are
aparecer.
drawn to Gaudiya
El
Vaishnavism,
hecho de que estemos
drawn
atraídos
to,
por el Gaudiya Vaishnavismo,
to a particular lineage and so on and so
a un
forth.
linaje
You have to kind of put these
particular,
things together and
hay que ir juntando
and
todas
realize
esas
that
piezas
it has
y
something
darse
to do
cuenta de que tiene
with
que
your
ver
inherent
con
nature.
quién eres,
right?
con tu naturaleza
So, but
inherente.
that's my basic answer. Does that help?
Esa es mi respuesta. ¿Ayuda?
Can't hear you, but it looks like you're
No
saying
puedo
yes.
oírte,
Okay.
pero creo que sí.
All right, good. All right, we have a few minutes more.
Bueno, tenemos unos
Any
minutos
question?
más.
The next question
La
is
siguiente
from Braj,
pregunta es de
Braj Sundari.
Braj Sundari.
Brajasundari is asking, in human-like leelas,
En los
God
lilas,
as
de
Krishna
forma
or
humana de
Ram
Krishna,
seems
como
to be
Krishna o Ram,
normally born,
parecieran ser
guess, from the
nacidos
mother
normalmente,
impregnant
entre
but
comillas,
his main female associates
pero sus
seem to not be
asociadas
born from humans,
parecieran no
but
ser
rather are
nacidas por
found and
humanos, sino que
adopted, for
encontradas o
example, Radha
adoptadas,
and
por ejemplo,
Sita.
Radha o
Is there
Sita.
any special meaning
¿Hay
behind it?
algún significado particular
And
detrás de esto?
Prabhupada commented on that also Lakshmi is born from the
Prabhupada también
milk
comenta
ocean, not from a mother.
que Lakshmi nace del océano de leche y no de una madre.
I think that these are very poetic ways of talking about these realities of Shaktis. So
Creo que esta es
I
una
think
forma muy
that
amplia de hablar
the emphasis should
de,
be that they're, whether it be Shakti or Shaktiman, they're unborn, right? And
de
there's
esto.
a story about them,
Hay una historia
them being born, and
acerca del nacimiento.
at the same time we tell it, we have to tell it in such a way that it's clear that they're unborn.
Y al mismo
Right.
tiempo en que se están contando estas historias,
Like you
uno
can
debe
speak
aclarar
about
que no han
Krishna's
sido,
birth and,
que no han nacido,
the ordinariness, the human likeness of it, if you will, but
porque esta
you have to do
naturaleza
so in such a way as
aparentemente
to make it
humana,
clear that, and this is all happening
pudiese
by
no
the
quedar
internal
claro,
energy and so on and
porque
so
todo esto
forth. He's
ocurre
not
por la
actually
influencia
born,
de
he's
la
unborn,
energía ilusoria y
and so
no son
on. So,
realmente, no es que
it's
realmente
difficult to
nazcan.
talk about the
Entonces
birth of
es
the
difícil
unborn, whether it be
hablar del nacimiento de lo que no tiene
avatar, the
nacimiento,
Shaktiman,
del avatar, de
or the
Shaktiman
Shakti.
o de
And there are
Shakti.
different poetic ways in which
Hay distintas formas poéticas
the texts and commentators
que los textos y los
have
comentadores
chosen to do so.
han elegido hacerlo.
At the moment, I can't think too much
En este
more
momento no puedo pensar mucho más
about it.
acerca de
But
esto.
I guess I could. What I'm saying also
Lo
is
que
that
estoy diciendo también
yes, there's a
es
story of
que
Radha's birth, and
hay una
there's
historia del
more than one
nacimiento de Radha,
story of Radha's birth,
pero hay más de una historia del nacimiento de Radha,
as I recall. And
según recuerdo.
so different commentators, writers, authors, texts have
Y los
chosen
comentarios
different
y
ways
los
to speak about it.
textos,
But I wouldn't give any particular significance to it
pero no le
in
daría un
terms of how
significado en
those descriptions
particular
are in contrast to or different from how
en
Krishna's
Y en la diferencia de cómo
has
nace
a
Krishna,
mother and a father. I mean, Radharani has a mother and a father. Who could doubt
Radharani
that,
también
right?
tiene una madre y un padre.
She wasn't born of her mother, but she's
No
definitely
nació
the
de,
mother of
de esa
the
madre, pero
daughter, excuse me,
definitivamente es, ella es su
Kirtida
hija,
and Rishabhanu Maharaj.
hija de Brishabhanu Maharaj.
So, the magical land.
Es una tierra mágica.
Anything else?
¿Algo más?
There is another question from
Hay otra
Gayatri.
pregunta
I don't
de
know if you'd like to take
Gayatri.
it this week or next
No
week.
sé si quiere tomarla esta semana o la
What is it?
próxima. ¿Qué dice?
It is in a book called Jai Jagannath by Dhruva
En un
Maharaj.
libro llamado Jai
He
Jagannath
mentions
menciona
from Srimad
del
Bhagavatam
Srimad Bhagavatam
11:27-12 about the 8 types of
acerca de 8
Archa forms.
tipos de formas
And
Archa
in
Vigraha.
there being earth, stone, jewel, sand, wood, metal, mind, and paint. So our Gaur Nityananda Ram that
Entonces,
we're worshiping here,
Gaur
I
Nityananda que
believe they're made
adoramos
out of
aquí, creo que
plastic.
están hechos de
So then
plástico.
my question is,
Entonces
I've
mi
heard you
pregunta
say in the
es,
past
he oído
that
que dicen en el
once you begin
pasado que
worship,
una vez que
God
comienza
enters.
una
But if that's
adoración,
the case,
Dios
why is
entra.
it mentioned that
Y
there
si
are
ese es el
certain
caso,
types
¿por
of
qué
like
hay
Archa Vigraha,
Archa Vigraha
like forms? When,
formas?
or can we not worship them? Or yeah, can you give
¿Podemos
some clarity, please?
adorarlos o
Who
no?
wrote the book?
¿Quién escribió ese libro?
Who's the book from?
Dhruva Maharaj.
Dhruva
Dhruva
Maharaj.
Maharaj. Okay. Well, I guess I would
Bueno,
say
creo que yo diría
that that is
que
the classical and scriptural
esa es la
description
descripción
of
escritural
the
clásica
Murti
del Murti
in the context
en el
of
contexto
Archan
de
Marg.
del Archana Marg.
And
Y en,
I would say that at the same time,
al mismo
we have
tiempo,
seen
hemos visto
over the centuries
a través de los siglos
that that
que
idea with regard to those
la idea en
elements
relación a esos
has
elementos
been extended
se ha extendido
to include
para
other
incluir otros,
forms,
otras
if you will, or
formas
ingredients
o
out of which
ingredientes de los
the
cuales
Archa Avatar,
el Archa
or
Avatar
in which the Archa Avatar will manifest. I
se
mean,
pueda manifestar.
what I mean to say is that
Lo que quiero decir
Prabhupada,
es, Prabhupada,
well, let's take the Murtis of Prabhupada.
bueno, tomemos
Most
los
of the ISKCON
Murtis
temples have a Murti of
de
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, por ejemplo, en los templos de
It
Ishkan,
appears within plastic resin, right?
que está hecha principalmente de resina plástica.
So there, I believe that the Panchatattva deities that he installed in Hawaii were also
Y también
made out
las
of
deidades que se
resin.
instalaron en Hawái.
One thing about these ingredients and stone and metal, well, anyway, there wasn't any plastic at the time. That's one way to look at it. And
Pero en
you're
ese tiempo
talking
no
about
existía el plástico.
Murti
Entonces,
of Prabhupada, Murti of Chaitanya
tiempos.
Mahaprabhu. These are special dispensations.
Entonces, si es un Murti de Prabhupada o
I
del
don't
Señor
know. I don't
Chaitanya, es
think
una dispensación especial.
the deity in the mind is mentioned there, but
No
what's he
sé,
made out
creo
of?
que no
So
se
there's
menciona
different
la
ways to
deidad en
think
la
about
mente, pero
that.
eso también es,
If I have a picture
es
of
una.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu
Por
in
ejemplo,
my
una
mind,
foto de, tengo una
and
foto
then I
de Chaitanya
craft it out
Mahaprabhu
of
en mi
sand
mente,
on the beach, or
y tal vez yo la hice
somehow I
de arena en la
construct it
playa, o lo he
externally out of
construido
elements,
externamente de
then I
elementos,
would think it would be worshipable.
también sería adorable.
But there will be objections from the strict Vaidhi Marg
Pero habría objeciones desde el punto de
sector.
vista del sector más del Archana Marg,
I would imagine to
me
that
imagino,
idea, but
esa idea.
I mean, I looked at my Guru Maharaj, he did things like
Pero yo
that.
veo a mi Guru Maharaj y él hacía
If he
cosas
couldn't
como
have
esa.
gotten, he would prefer to have brass deities or astadata,
Él hubiese preferido tener deidades de bronce
whatever, a marble and so on and so forth.
o
But if he
mármol.
couldn't have gotten
Y si él no podía
in the
obtenerla,
United States,
entonces,
for example, or
por
Europe,
ejemplo, en los Estados Unidos,
he would have made them out of anything and
Él
considered
los
them
hubiese hecho de cualquier
worshipable.
cosa y las
That's
consideraría
my sense.
adorables,
Of course, he has that power.
porque él tiene ese poder.
So it's good to us for us to reflect back, and
Y es bueno poder
it's
reflexionar hacia
perfectly,
atrás de
obviously
que
possible anywhere
era
now to make
perfectamente
a deity out of
posible.
any of those 8
Ahora en
ingredients
cualquier
that are
parte
mentioned,
es posible
rather
hacer,
than out of resin, and that would be, preferable going
hacer las
forward.
deidades
But
de
if you
esos
have
materiales que
the
mencionas y no
form
de
of
plástico.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made out of anything, then,
Puedes hacer la forma de Chaitanya Mahaprabhu
there's two
de
trees at
todo.
Madhavan. When we first started Madhavan,
Cuando
we
recién
had a little
comenzamos
flat
Madhuvan,
area where we were in
teníamos un
tents,
área
and down
plana
below there were 2 trees that reached up like
y
this.
había 2
For
árboles.
me, they were the
Y para mí,
Gauranitai deities.
ellos eran
So
deidades de Gauranitai.
that's the way I looked at it. Now, Brigu is a scholar from,
Ahora,
knows
Brigu
something
es un
about Vaidhi
académico
Marg and what's mentioned
acerca del... Y
in
él sabe
Hari
acerca del
Bhakti
Vaidhi Marg
Vilas, and he may have a comment.
y el Hari Bhakti Vilas. No
Brigu,
sé si él tiene algún comentario.
do you have a comment?
¿Tienes algún
Well,
comentario?
those materials that you mentioned,
Esos materiales que
they are mentioned
mencionas
there.
se mencionan en el Hari
And
Bhakti
I think
Vilas.
in the Bhagavatam, actually. I
Y creo
think
que también en el Bhagavatam.
that list comes from the Bhagavatam.
Mhm.
And plastic, of course, isn't part of that.
Entonces, por supuesto que el plástico
But
no es parte de eso.
then you could say,
Pero
as you
pudieses
just said, you
decir
could say
que,
that,
como
well,
ya has
that's not
dicho,
authorized then.
no está
But
autorizado.
if Prabhupada did something, then
Pero si Prabhupada hizo algo,
that is strong praman. Also,
eso
marble
es
is
una gran
not
evidencia. Incluso
mentioned
el
in that
mármol no
list.
se menciona en esa lista.
Stone.
Es piedra.
Yes, but marble
Sí,
is
pero el
you don't find any
mármol
ancient
no,
deities made out of
no
marble.
encuentras ninguna deidad antigua hecha de mármol,
So
Granite.
yeah,
sino granito.
and the main reason for that is that marble isn't very
Y la razón es
durable.
porque
It
el
breaks
mármol no es
very
tan
easy.
durable, se quiebra muy fácilmente.
Can
But-
one then also argue that
Podría también
plastic
argumentar
resin
que
is
el
made of earth,
plástico
comes
se
from
hace de
earth?
tierra y viene de
Yeah.
la tierra?
There you go. Yeah.
Sí, ahí, por ahí va.
But if you go to a planet where none of those things are there, then
Pero si vas a un
there would
planeta
be
donde
no
ninguna de
origin
estas cosas
there.
estará
So,
allá, entonces,
who knows what
quién
what you
sabe
might find on the moon?
lo que
There
puedes
might be a
encontrar en la
better
luna.
better stone in terms of
Puede
its
ser mejor piedra
permanence, unbreakability. So
en cuanto a
yes,
durabilidad
we
y
follow the
rompibilidad.
scriptures.
Pero seguimos las
And
escrituras.
as Guru Maharaj Pujapad Sridhar used
Y
to
Puya
say, they
Sridhar
are
Maharaj solía
a
decir,
static form of
había
revelation or a passive form of revelation, and the sadhu
formas
guru is an
activas y
active
pasivas de
form of
revelación. Y
revelation.
los sadhus
So
son
you
formas activas de
can take
revelación.
from there and
Entonces puedes tomarlo de
expand
ahí y expandirlo
the idea.
a esa
We find
idea.
that example. So, all right. Well, that's we're on the time for today.
Bueno, ya
So
estamos en el tiempo de hoy.
nice to be with you all.
Ha
Next
sido muy
week
bueno
they'll be in North
verlos. La
Carolina. I don't
próxima
know if
semana
there'll be
vamos a estar
a
en
Sunday
Carolina
call
del
or not.
Norte.
We'll have
No
to
sé si
see
habrá o no
what the
preguntas y
arrangement there
respuestas,
is, but I hope to connect with you all again as soon
pero espero que
as
nos
possible.
conectemos.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Dhanyavad,
Krishna.
Gurudev, I have a comment.
Gurudeva, un
Prabhupada
comentario.
mentioned just give
Prabhupada
them these
mencionó
dolls and
que
have them wave incense.
Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.
Prabhupada mencionaba que tomen estas muñecas y llévenlas a sus hogares,
Ya.
refiriéndose a las deidades de Gauranitai.
So yeah, thanks everybody.
Gracias a
As
todos.
Guru Maharaj just mentioned,
Como mencionó
we're
Guru
not
Maharaj,
sure yet if
no
there's going to
estamos
be a
seguros
Swami
si es
call
que va
next
a
week or
haber
not. So keep an eye
llamada la
out
próxima semana,
on
así
the
que
Facebook announcements and the
manténganse
newsletter and
conectados
so
con
on.
el
We'll let you
newsletter
know
y la
as
página de
soon as possible
Facebook
there.
y les haremos
But
saber
there
lo
will
antes
certainly be
posible.
classes going on
Pero sí
from
va a
when
haber
he's in North
clases
Carolina.
desde
So
North
I
Carolina,
think that
así
those times will
que
be announced too. So
creo
just
que
keep an eye out for those. And,
esos horarios también se van a
have a lovely
anunciar.
week and rest of your
Que tengan una buena semana. Bye bye.